Magandang araw. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Work Remote online conference where we'll be discussing remote work and its benefit for job seekers. To officially start our program, I would like to call on the Chief of Staff of the Department of Trade and Industry and the Undersecretary of the Management Services Group, Undersecretary Ireneo Boy Vismonte, for our welcome remarks.
Thank you, Alo, and good afternoon to all virtual audience. First of all, I'd like to say hello to, for the first time, we're meeting Miss June Bolneo, who is helping our e-commerce program office through the third component of our Pivot Embrace Technology, or our PET project, by introducing work remote. We are also particularly thankful to the partners of DTI and our supporter in the Senate, Senator Angara and his team, because DTI shares the Senator's vision of promoting digital skills through the pandemic. Many were forced out of during the pandemic, many were forced out of their jobs, while we also see e-commerce companies that require more jobs with the right skills. And the DTI hopes to develop a cadre of digitally skilled workers to support these companies. That is, in fact, in the 2022 e-commerce roadmap. I wish to acknowledge the many companies here today: Automatic, Freelancers in the Philippines, Microsoft, Kinsta, and Grow Remote. Thank you to all of you. Last January 29, 2021, DTI, led by its Secretary Ramon Lopez, officially launched the Philippines e-commerce 2022 roadmap. And one of the outcomes in the plan is to ensure we're able to develop digitally enabled workers. And beginning this year, DTI, led by our e-commerce program office, will implement a project called Pivot Embrace Technology, or the PET project. The PET project has three components, either aimed at capacitating senior high school students, the gig workers, unemployed, or those who were affected by the loss of jobs due to pandemic, those who are looking for alternative careers. Through the PET project, we are introducing options for our citizens, our MSMEs, a short-term course, a certification course, or for those who want to explore remote working. The PET project not only addresses the supply side of making sure we have skilled workers, but we are doing this because we want to make sure that our companies are supported by human capital who are equipped with the knowledge and skills. Through the office of Senator Angara, we met Ms. June Bolneo, who introduced the concept of work remote. June is the co-founder of Work Remote, an e-learning platform dedicated to providing remote work education to individuals and companies. We are proud that the Filipina is leading the remote work movement. Work Remote, as one of the components of PET project, is composed of four phases, namely, phase one is where we are. The Work Remote webinar aims to introduce the basics of remote work to both job seekers and businesses. Phase two is the application, and phase three and four is the training and coaching. When we develop component three, we are looking at gig workers, OFWs, or those who have lost their jobs due to the pandemic, or those who are seeking alternative careers. We're pleasantly surprised that this has exceeded our expectations, as this component has generated over 10,000 expressions of interest, 11,114 to be exact. Because of the tremendous interest, Work Remote recommended this online conference to introduce the basics of remote work to both individuals and companies. Our webinar seeks to help our citizens successfully find work, and there are tremendous opportunities in remote work. At this day and age, remote work carries a new meaning, as it does not necessarily mean outside our shores. As I made to understand, remote work is not about location. Remote work is a way of working. Our sessions will guide the participants where to find remote job opportunities, help participants prepare in their application for remote work, and provide participants with the resources and support needed during the application process. Through the guidance of Ms. June Bolneo, our third component will adapt the remote work mentorship program to a group of 100. We will make them ready and employable, but of course, the fate of their application rests on the applicants themselves. This project is starting small, but the interest it has generated indicate that there is a potential for scaling up. This is the future of work, and we must be ready for it. Much stress on what will happen for this pilot initiative. Again, on behalf of the DTI, I would like to thank Senator Angara, Ms. June Bolneo, and the work remote team. Particularly here is Pedro, the speakers, and our virtual audience. Magandang hapon po at maraming salamat po sa ating lahat.
To provide opportunities to every Filipino family is the goal of every measure and policy pushed by Senator Sonny Angara. He has sponsored and authored more than 200 laws in his 16 years as legislator. Senator Sonny has authored such landmark legislation as the Free College Law, the Free Kindergarten Act, the Universal Healthcare Act, the Expanded Public Employment Service Office Act, the Kasambahay Law, the OWA Charter, the Expanded Senior Citizens Act, the National Athletes and Coaches Benefits and Incentives Act, and the National Sports Academy Act. He now serves as a chairman of the Senate Committee on Finance and is advocating a Tatak Pinoy strategy for making Philippine goods and services more sophisticated and globally competitive. Seeing the potential of Filipino professionals to succeed further in the digital economy, Senator Angara filed the National Digital Careers Act and the National Digital Transformation Act, bills which have garnered renewed interest in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Senator Sonny is a graduate of Xavier School, the London School of Economics, the University of the Philippines College of Law, and Harvard Law School. Once again, a message from Honorable Senator Sonny Angara.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to congratulate DTI and its partners, Work Remote and Microsoft, to ASEC Jean Pacheco, of course, Secmon Lopez, Jean Bolmeo, and it appropriately contact was made digitally with our office to push the agenda and push the envelope on digital careers, digital transformation. So we look forward to a fruitful day or a fruitful session or sessions where we'll learn so many useful and productive skills. I think as you all know, we're playing a bit of catch up, but I think in the digital world, we can really leverage on the abilities of Filipinos, resourcefulness, communication skills, and a good education. So we're headed in the right direction, and we thank everyone who's involved with this project. Salamat po, mabuhay kayo. Good luck. God bless.
Now I would like to call on the co-founder of Work Remote for her opening message, Ms. June Bolneo.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I am so grateful that I'm able to give back to the Philippines now. I have been working remotely for almost a decade, and my true goal is basically to share my knowledge about remote working. And I think having this conference, DTI, giving us the platform to be able to share, what we are enjoying at the moment and what we know is such a great privilege. And I hope that we have a fruitful day. I hope that you learn a lot from this conference. And if there's anything that you need, we are here to help as well. So far, that is it for our side. Again, thank you, Yusek Boy, Asek Jean, for giving us the opportunity to be able to teach the Filipinos about what remote working is and its benefits to our nation.
Kaya natin yan. Kaya natin yan. Kung nais umasenso, manap ng trabaho, o di kaya'y subukang magnegosyo. Lumikha ng produkto't sikaping lumago, inspirasyon mong pagkapiko. Katuwang ng gobyerno sa iyong tagumpay, iisa ang ating hangarin. Pag may abilidad at oportunidad, tiyak na ang lahat ay uunlad. Trabaho, negosyo, kabuhayan, kaya natin yan. Walang iwanan. Go lang ng go mga kaibigan. Trabaho, negosyo, kabuhayan, kaya natin yan. Sulo, Pilipinas! Go, 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 kababayan! Kaya natin yan. Kaya natin yan. Kaya huwag magtipid sa iyong mga pangarap. Sige-sige sa pagsisikap. Asenso'y sigurado sa hinaharap. Manalig lang palagi sa sarili. Trabaho, negosyo, kabuhayan, kaya natin yan. Walang iwanan. Go lang ng go mga kaibigan. Trabaho, negosyo, kabuhayan, kaya natin yan. Sulo, Pilipinas! Go, 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 kababayan! Kaya natin yan. Kaya natin yan.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is June Bolneo, and I'm the co-founder of Work Remote. Today, we are going to be discussing the introduction to remote working. I'm very excited to be talking about this particular topic because I think there's a lot of things, there's a lot of misconception when it comes to remote working. Especially during these troubled times, the pandemic kind of forced everybody to work from home. And the most common misconception is that working from home directly correlates or is equals to remote working. And so we're gonna go ahead and touch on that topic a little bit, but let me go through the slides and we're gonna discuss it further. So what is remote working, right? So if you could type in the chat, maybe you can share with us your ideas. What is your perception of remote working? What is remote working for you, right? And then we can go ahead and go into the technical details of it. So remote working or remote work is actually a working style that allows professionals to work outside of a traditional office environment. And basically, this means that remote work or remote working is not just working from home. It means it's a way of working. It can be in the office. It can be in a co-working space. It can be from home, in a library, in a cafe, right? And what we want to emphasize is that it's basically remote working is not a location, because most of the time people think that because they are working, they are allowing people to work from home, that automatically means that it's remote working. Yes, it can be considered as a location, a remote location from the office, but that doesn't equate, or that doesn't equals to remote working immediately, right? Remote working is basically having or allowing people to choose where they work more productively, and that could be from home, and that's what we want to emphasize. Now, there are different types of remote companies. So we have all remote companies. That means that by default, they are remote. They don't have an office, but it could also be they are remote only within a certain geography. It could be only within the city, or it could be all remote within a specific country, or in some cases, it could be all remote in a specific continent or a region. There are many reasons why companies would choose an all remote with a geography limitation. And that has a lot to do with the business entity, the legal entities of the businesses. Maybe they only have legal entities in certain areas. Maybe they only want that particular time frame because that's during their office hours, and there's going to be an overlap with their teammates. It really depends on the company who's offering this to their employees, right? But they do exist, and they are all over the world. And fully distributed companies are something similar as well. They are also all remote. They don't have an office, but they're fully distributed across time zones, across all regions. It means that it doesn't matter where you are located. Like companies like GitLab and Automatic, they hire people from everywhere. We actually have people from Automatic. Marjorie is going to be joining us later today, and she can tell us a little bit more about what a fully distributed company is like, what it's like to work for a fully distributed company. The culture is different, when you're fully distributed. Now, GitLab, we also have Filipinos in GitLabs. We have GitLabbers in the Philippines, and the point is that we have companies, fully distributed companies, or all remote companies who are willing to hire from the Philippines. And then we have the two other types of remote companies, which is remote first, hybrid, and remote friendly hybrid. So these are the hybrid types of remote working, right? Microsoft is a really good example of a hybrid company. So they are trying to embrace a remote first culture. That means that by default, they are remote. They are flexible. They can choose their schedule, whether they want to go ahead and work from the office or whether they want to work from home or from another location that is approved by their company, then they can go ahead and choose to do so. So Microsoft is giving the power to their employees to be able to choose that for themselves. Another good example is Facebook is actually trying to go remote as well, or remote first. A lot of big companies from the Silicon Valley, the big tech companies have started this transition to being a remote first company, giving the option to their employees to be able to work from home, or if they want to move out of Silicon Valley, because California is expensive, right? And so they would allow their employees to work from anywhere, because most of the fully distributed companies, or all remote companies, they are in tech. Not all of them, but it's a lot easier for tech companies to adapt to this new way of working, because most of the tasks that they do are actually can be done online. And so they realized, especially when the pandemic hit, like a lot of companies started realizing, like, hey, we can actually do this, and they are choosing, they're in this phase where they want to choose between, do they want to go hybrid first, or do they want to go, remote first or remote friendly, right? But they are in this section in the remote first or remote friendly. So remote friendly companies are companies that are by default working in the office, but you can go ahead and work from home if you want to, right? But they expect the employees to go to the office on a normal basis. And so, as you can see, there's many. This is not by all means the full list of remote companies. There's a lot of diversification. You also have like flexible companies wherein your shift can actually move from the morning to the night. There's a certain allowance of hours that you can move your shift. So it really depends on the company, but we kind of put them in these 4 buckets to make it easier for people to understand, right? So I hope this kind of enlightens you of what type of companies are out there. And when you start applying for a company, you can go ahead and try asking them, are you all remote? Are you fully distributed? Or if you are applying for a regular company, maybe in the Philippines, somewhere in the city, you would say, are you remote first hybrid, or are you remote friendly hybrid, right? So this would actually make you understand, or allows you to kind of understand what the culture of the company is like before you even join them, or before you even show up in an interview. So aside from the different types of remote companies, we also have 3 different types of remote workers. And I think when in the Philippines, when we talk about remote workers, we automatically associate it with gig workers or freelancers, which is the most typical type of work, online work that we get from the Philippines. I also started as a freelancer and a contractor many years ago, right? And so and this is when we started as Filipinos, started adapting to this new way of working, the entry point was actually in the freelancing contractual part. However, either the freelancer, contractor, or the online entrepreneurs, wherein you create your own business, right? Or you sell something online. Those 2 are the most common in our country. However, what not many people know is about remote employees. And remote employees are actually like, it's like you belong to a regular company with your contracts and social security and taxes and all of the benefits that you would get from a normal employee, but you don't have an office, right? So going back to the type of companies that we spoke about earlier. If you belong to an all remote company or a fully distributed company, right? You could be living in the Philippines, but your teammates can be distributed all over the world, and your company would not have an office. Therefore, it really doesn't make any sense for them to to kind of like require you to go to the office, because there is none. There is no headquarters. And so all of their employees are remote employees, right? And this doesn't, we don't talk about it very often because most of us don't know they exist. However, there's actually, a lot of opportunities out there, because if you realize, especially now, right after the pandemic, and companies have started adapting to remote working, the people that they will hire later on will most likely be remote. Especially during this period, it's very difficult for us to ask somebody to go to a physical office. So most of the time, if they are going to be hiring anytime soon, most likely it's going to be a remote employee, right? So this is like the right chance for you to start applying, the right time for you to start applying. But knowing these three types of remote workers would also kind of enlighten you, like, which path do I want to take, right? Do I want to go with do I want to have my own business, right? If that is something that you want, then most likely you will be drawn to becoming an online entrepreneur, where you have your own store, you have your own products and services that you sell, you are your own company, right? And if you are more of a freelancer because you want to work for a project, or you want to work with multiple clients, you want to own your time a bit more, like you don't want to work full time, you only want to work X amount of hours per day, then the freelancing part might be more attractive for you. And then if you want something a bit more stable, and you want to work full time, there's a lot of benefits in being a remote employee, because then you would be, you have the contracts, so social security is taken care of on your behalf, and the taxes are being processed on your behalf as well. Then maybe the remote employee would be a good option for you, like to have that sort of stability when you're talking about work. Right, so keep these three things in mind when you go ahead and start looking for work. It's important that you choose which one before you even start applying, or at least keep that in the back of your head. Right, so I want a full-time job. I want to only work in the afternoons, or I want a side hustle. So meaning you shouldn't be applying for full-time remote work if you're only looking for a side gig. Or if you want a full-time remote job, you shouldn't be looking for a side gig, right? It could be, but it would be more effective for you to actually focus down on which path you want to take. Now, we have been doing these initiatives from in other places as well, especially here in Portugal, because I am actually based in Portugal right now. I'm originally from Cebu. I'm actually Cebuana, Bisayang Dako, Bistak. So I'm a Cebuana. We moved here about almost 5 years ago. It's going to be 5 years this year. My Portuguese is still terrible, but but my Bisaya is very good though. So it's still very good. But the point is, we actually ran similar programs here in Portugal. And this is the data that we've collected from that program that we ran last year. So the highlights of our past programs, right? 63 of our applicants were women. And this is not, but this is just data from one program, and our other programs actually shows more or less the same data. The need for remote working and full-time work, a stable online job, usually is, in the women's side. We kind of want it, more than the men. I'm sure the male side of our species also wants it, but we kind of want it more. We want to stay, at home, take care of our kids, be closer to our family, right? And out of all of the applicants that we received, 64% of them want full-time remote work, right? So they want employment. And you would be relieved to know, if you do not have any online experience, 50% of all of our, from that batch also do not have any working, online experience. So don't feel so bad. It's normal, because this is a new way of working. We didn't have any experience about this, right? And we are currently adapting to it right now. And so with regards to the industry, we have tried to rank all of the industries that submitted the application. And surprisingly, we do have tech in there, right? But the highest were people from sales and marketing. So and the fact is, there's a lot of ICT jobs out there, a lot of sales and marketing jobs out there. And what businesses need, and I don't know if you guys, everybody knows about this, but sales and marketing is very diverse. You could be doing sales and marketing for any type of business. And you imagine all types of businesses need sales and marketing. So imagine how many businesses do we have now, in existence in the Philippines, globally. How many businesses do we have? And all of those businesses will need sales and marketing, digital sales, digital marketing. And they will need people. They will need, help to run their sales and marketing campaigns. And that's, and if you look at it, that, from that perspective, there's so much jobs out there, so much work. Like we have been working remotely. Me and my co-founder, actually, we've been working for almost 10 years remotely. And we can tell you that it's the jobs out there is, enormous. There's a big gap of the talent and the jobs. It's just that the talent doesn't know where to find these jobs. And these jobs, usually they're so bogged down with the applications that they get that they're kind of like, having a hard time picking which one they want to hire. So there's a mismatch. And what we're trying to do is try to bridge that gap between the talent and the companies and the businesses that are looking for help. And that's that's why the work remote came about. We're here to guide people. So what are the things that our applicants or our learners were needed? What kind of support were they asking when we ran the program? So 70% of them actually said that they needed guidance on where to start. These are, by the way, these are amazing people. They have like degrees and whatnot. Some of them didn't also, but they have a lot of experience, so what they lack in degree, they made up in experience. But they didn't know where to start. Like, where do we even begin? Like, I've been working in the same career for 20 years and now I have to start from scratch because I don't know where to find these jobs. Like, what are the jobs that are available out there? And that's where we step in, right? We guide them. Okay, these are the available jobs in the market, right? These are your skills. You can use the skills that you've already accumulated, for the past 20 years doing this job, and apply that for a new, career online. Whether you want to transfer, let's just say you're an accountant and you want to do accounting, but you want to do that online. By all means, you can go ahead and do that. Now you can do that online, right? So you can choose to stay in the same industry, because the industries that we have in the real world, in the physical world, are slowly migrating into digital. Now, one of our one company called Safety Wing is also releasing a product that is virtual health, wherein you can call in and have a consult with a doctor virtually. So you can, and healthcare is a very essential type of work, but we are slowly adapting that to a digital format. So other than guidance, they also needed career coaching. And so this is where we normally get stuck, because we don't know how to brand ourselves. We don't know how to put our best foot forward when it comes to applying for work. Maybe it's cultural, maybe it's, maybe because we were never taught about this when we were growing up or when we graduated from college. I'm sure the universities now are doing a better job than they did when we were still in college, but we never had this. We never had this pep talk, like, you can go ahead and do this in your resume and whatnot, and you can do this in your LinkedIn and all that stuff. So we help them when it comes to putting their best self forward whenever they apply, like working on their CV, working on their cover letters, and all that sort of thing, and their LinkedIn as well, how to network online. And then lastly, the mentorship, wherein we try to bring them into our network and basically mentor them, like, this is what worked and this is what didn't work for us. We just share what we have. And by the way, Work Remote is part of a larger organization. We are part of a larger group, an association of different remote workers, of different companies that are working remotely, that are advocating for remote working. And some of those people, some of those advocates, are going to be presenting today as well. And speaking of career guidance and career coaching, one of our speakers from Microsoft today, Trish, is going to talk specifically about that, right? So how do you work on your CV and show up on interviews and whatnot? So it would be a very exciting topic to talk about. But yeah, so that is it for me. If you have any questions, this would be the right time to ask them. Hi, and we are back. Thank you so much for everybody. Thank you so much for waiting. And so, without further ado, I would like to introduce Jason Duly, considered as one of the forefathers of online freelancing in the Philippines. He has seen how remote work flourished within the country. So his Facebook group, Freelancer in the Philippines, Flip, and you might have heard of it, is one of the largest in the nation with more than 200,000 members. So we're going to pause a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and start with Jason's presentation.
Hey, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you guys for waiting. I know there was a mix-up with the time. June mentioned to me there was a mix-up with the time, but we are here. Oh wait, I'm getting an echo. Teka lang. Oy, I'm here on my own YouTube pala. Ayan. So yes, we're back here. We're talking about this topic right now. We're talking about freelancing, the rise of the gig economy. Now, I'm in the chat room. I'm seeing your guys' chats over here. And I asked earlier here on my phone. I asked earlier who here is an existing freelancer, who here is like a current an aspiring freelancer, and who here is a newbie. And it looks like we have a lot of newbies here, a lot of people na parang are just getting into freelancing, who haven't really started freelancing and want to get into it, right? We have a majority of the people here, and we have some people who are students of the VA Bootcamp. Thank you guys for joining, or members of our Facebook group, Freelancers in the Philippines. Thank you guys for joining over here. But yeah, a lot of you guys are newbies, and this is great for those that are, I say, newer into freelancing. For those of you that know freelancing now, but you already know this stuff. But for those of you that are newer into freelancing, you'll get a lot of education. You'll learn a lot of things in our talk right now. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I won't dilly-dally anymore, or di ko naman patagalin. But let's go over here. And if you haven't, if you didn't see it in the chat, I want to ask you guys, parang, who here is an aspiring freelancer? Who here is a newbie? Who here is existing freelancer? I'm going to look at it here. And if you have any questions, my recommendation is to click on yung Q&A portion. Parang may pin post sa taas, like here, I think. You click on this here, so you can ask your questions and I'll answer them later. Kasi if sa chat baka di ko makita because there's lots of comments. And I'm also be busy with the presentation. So yeah, you can click like here and then click that link para you can get to the Q&A portion. We'll ask those questions later and I'll answer them later. So let's talk about freelancing. First of all, before we define kung ano ba talaga yung freelancing and yung mga technical and yung details dun, I want to ask this question, or I'm going to answer this question actually. Why go into freelancing? Bakit ba tayo papasok dito sa freelancing? Like what is the reason that we want to go into this whole thing called freelancing? And we're in the Philippines, right? You guys are in the Philippines. I think 90% of the watchers right now are in the Philippines. So let's talk about the benefits for freelancing, especially for Filipinos, okay? Especially sa mga Pinoy. Okay, so what are these benefits? And you might have some benefits. You might be able to discuss them in the chat. Makikita nyo, you can discuss them, talk about it with you guys. But let's talk about this right now. And I'm going to give you some of the most common benefits. For those of you that aren't familiar, we have a group of over 200,000 aspiring and current freelancers, 200,000 Filipinos. And we asked this question, like, why would you go into freelancing, or why are you interested in going into freelancing? And ito yung mga most common answers nila. Okay, one of the most common answers is this, okay, no everyday commute to work. Right. As you can see here, this is EDSA, and then we have the MRT on top. If you're familiar with Metro Manila, you know the traffic. There was a time I worked in Manila. I was traveling from Parañaque to Quezon City. Parang one way lang, 2.5 hours. So parang back and forth, 5 hours in travel ko, back and forth. I'm here in Cebu, and when I moved back here to Cebu, I was working sa call center malapit dito. It took me mga 45 minutes one way, so mga 1.5 hours. How about you? How much time do you spend going back and forth and in travel? How much time do you spend? I know some of you are gonna answer several hours and so on, but how much time? Parang may poll tayo. Lagay nyo sa chat. How much time do you spend? And if you think about it, itong 5 hours ko dati, traveling back and forth, I could be doing so many other things. Diba? Ang sayang ng oras ng 5 hours. Even some people, they sleep for 5 hours sa isang araw, di ba? And 5 hours, I could be, you know, well, bata pa ko nun, and you know, of course, didn't have kids, don't have kids yet. But I could be, you know, if I had family, I'd be able to spend time with my family. At that time, I was staying with my lolo and lola, who are not with us anymore. Pero I could have spent more time with them, di ba? Yung 5 hours na yun, sayang. I could have, if gusto ko mag-Dota or right now wala nang Dota pa, hindi na sikat yung yung League of Legends or Mobile Legends. I could have been doing that, diba? Sa 5 hours na yun. Or I could have been reading a book. I could have been earning money. Pwede pang trabaho yun, 5 hours isang araw, diba? That's 20 hours a week. So that's a lot of time wasted, right? Ikaw, with that time, ito, sabi 1 hour, 30 minutes, 45, 2 to 3 hours, back and forth, 2 hours, 15 minutes, wow, 6 hours, grabe talaga yung travel time. And that's time, I know a lot of you are moms, diba? A lot of you are moms or dads. That's time you could be spending with your kids. Diba? That's quality time you could be spending with your kids na nasasayang lang because you're just traveling. And you're wasting so much time. So one of the main reasons, one of the top reasons why a lot of people want to go into freelancing is because they don't want to spend this time in travel. They don't want to spend this time in traffic. Wala na yung commute. Kasi yung mga freelancers dito, I know may mga freelancers dito and they're gonna say, pagising ko, ayun, may computer na agad, you're 10 seconds away. Diba? Imbis 5-6 hours away, you're 10 seconds away from work. Right? So yun, yung time. And time is something that we can't get back. Diba? Then we have money. Number two reason natin is money. Yung higher earnings. Of course, be nice, but for me, time is more important, especially if you have kids. That's something you can't get back. Diba? So number two, the second reason that we have is higher earnings. Right? So just to give some context here, I'm going to go into my story later, pero I used to work in the call center. I used to be a manager. I was earning mga 50,000 pesos a month. And then I went into freelancing. So of course, I'm earning more right now. Tapos nasa bahay lang ako, diba? Some of our students in the VA bootcamp, we have a lot of students. We have mga 6,000 students right now. Some of our students, they used to be factory workers. We used to have baggers na used to have mga helpers. And they were earning 10,000 pesos a month or less. Now, we see them, they're able to go into freelancing, they're able to study, they're able to learn, and they're earning 30,000 a month. Okay, 30,000 a month compared sa 10,000 dati. Ang laki ng jump na yun, di ba? If you're earning less than 10,000 and then you're earning 30,000 right now, that's a very big jump. And that changes a lot of lives. And this is why we're doing this, because we want to change lives, we want to improve lives. So that jump is huge in terms of quality of life, in terms of what you can provide for your family, in terms of what you can buy and what you can spend on, di ba? Others naman sa VA Bootcamp, like some of our members, they're earning 50,000 pesos. Or yung iba, they're earning 100,000 pesos. Yung iba, even more than that. Pero, as you can see, diba, yung jump in the quality of life and jump in what you're able to provide for your family, for your future, it's really there. But you can get this. Yung potential is really there sa freelancing. Okay, I know there are a lot of comments right now. There might be some questions. I can't remember since there are so many comments. I can't answer the comments. Type them in the Q&A section here, okay? Because I'm focused dito sa presentation and not here in the comments right now. Okay, the third reason, the number 3 reason is being able to work from anywhere in the world. Okay, I was able to travel when I was freelancing. I was earning enough before and I was able to travel habang nagtrabaho. Parang vacation and work at the same time, especially I didn't have a family yet, but I wanted to be able to travel kasi kung may bata mahirap na, diba? So I wanted to travel the world, and this is me. This is in Greece. That's in Athens, actually. And then I was able to be able to do my work kahit saan, anywhere in the world. And it doesn't need to be naman traveling the world. Pero for other people, this is very important for them because they can work, of course, kung nasa bahay, right? As long as you have internet, as long as you have your computer, laptop or desktop, and you have internet, yun naman pinaka-importante. Yung iba, it's very important because they can visit family. Yung iba sabi nila, okay, I want to visit my parents in the province, pero I can't because I'm working in the call center. Pero with freelancing, they're able to do that. They're able to go to, well, right now, mahirap, diba, kasi pandemic. Pero before, they're able to travel to Mindanao, to around the Philippines, as long as you have internet. And hindi naman kailangan, for most jobs, hindi naman kailangan na naka-fiber connection ka. A lot of the times, I just use my cell phone. Naka-4G na ako. Work from anywhere as long as you have internet. Even right now in the pandemic, minsan me and my fiance tinatamad kami, so we go to like Starbucks para magtrabaho social, no? Starbucks para magtrabaho para ibang environment, para may ibang tao na, of course, social distancing, very important, social distancing. So yeah, the next reason is being able to work at any time. Okay, so most work when it comes to working online is flexible flexi yung schedule. So what that means is that it doesn't matter kung what time that you work as long as matatapos mo yung trabaho by the deadline. So may mga clients na, okay, before gumagawa ako ng website. So sabihin nila, okay, I want the website done by end of March. Ganun. So basta matapos siya by end of March, ako na bahala when I'm going to am I going to work 12 hours today tapos 0 hours tomorrow? Ako na bahala dun. And this is yung one of our coaches in the VA Bootcamp. This is Anna Soriano. She just gave birth a few months ago. And this is perfect for her kasi kung gising si baby, di ba? And he does some mga admin work, yung mga may data entry work siya. When tulog si baby, she's able to do her work dito na trabaho habang he's carrying the baby. So very flexible. And this is great, especially if you have little kids and if you have families, because you can do the work around them, right? So right now, sige, 30 minutes, you take care of the baby, or 1 hour, ganun, tapos tulog siya, sige na, 2 hours tulog siya, you do your work, you complete it, and then gising ulit, so you can work your schedule around that. As long as you finish the work by the deadline, you can meet. Even if you don't have kids, this is great because yung iba sa atin, di ba, morning person. So yung mga trabaho in the morning, okay? Yung iba afternoon, yung iba evening people, di ba? So in the morning, pwede ka mag Netflix, tapos sa gabi, that's when you parang focus and you do your work. So yung being able to work at any time is a huge benefit, di ba? Unlike sa office na may schedule talaga. Okay? May existing schedule. I just noticed it pala sa dito sa YouTube, di pala kita yung last line ng presentation putol kasi may frame. Pero it's okay. You can hear me naman. Okay, and then another benefit is in professional growth. You're able to do what you love. Sige, and this is great for a lot of people because ako, in my situation before, I was working in the call center. I worked in the call center for a lot of years, more than 5 years, and I was stuck. Yeah, kasi nasa call center ka, diba? You can't really go into other things na hindi naman related to call center, diba? Ako, I felt very stuck. I felt na I got bored. I was very bored na kasi paulit-ulit every day, diba? And I wanted to do different things. But I couldn't. I couldn't do different things because trabaho ko is ito lang. Yeah. But in freelancing, you can do what you love. A lot of times we tell people to start out as virtual assistants and then they grow into other roles, into graphic design, into marketing, into ads, to writing, into emails, technical, web design, and so on. Right. By the way, June, if you can tell me, just chat with me on Messenger. If I go over the time, is that okay? Do we have parang a buffer? Because it looks like I'm gonna go over the time. But I'm gonna try to make this faster. So yeah, I'm a bit. Nakita, I'm just looking at the time here. I'm running a bit slow. So I'll make this a bit faster. Sige, so just message me. Okay. Next is being able to become a better person. What do I mean by this? So if we look at the benefits earlier, no commute, you're able to earn more, able to work anywhere, able to work anytime, able to do what you love. Sobrang blessed na kayo nun, diba? You're going to be very, very blessed. And when you have those blessings, and we've seen this from a lot of our members, is you're able to bless others na. You're able to give back, you're able to teach others. Ako, I teach others. Yung ibang members namin are able to mentor others sa group and help others grow and give them, help improve other people's lives. So ito yung mga benefits. Okay, ito yung mga lahat ng benefits of freelancing. And I hope, maybe this convinced you, has this convinced you in any way, okay itong freelancing na to. Or has this parang, ayoko na freelancing. Sige, let me know in the comments. Did it encourage you or discourage you ba? Sige, I'm just looking at the comments. Your audio is working, most of the time 6 hours, or yung mga travel time. May problem ba yung audio? I don't think. Try ko close again. Start na. Ako. Yung iba clear. I think it's the connection sa ibang tao. Because yung iba clear, yung iba may issue. Sige. All right. So let me go into my story. Na, yeah, audio is good. Okay. Let me go into my story. Let me share about my own story. Baka makarelate kayo. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. But before I started freelancing, I didn't know anything about freelancing. I started freelancing in mga 2010, 2011. And at that time, I was working my way up in the call center, and I became promoted. I became a trainer. I became a manager. And this is where I used to work, sa Panda Manila. Ay, hindi. Sa Chase. Sa Chase, sa harap naman, di ba? Sa Panda Manila. Which is okay naman. Pero I was working in JP Morgan Chase sa call center. Wala namang call center yung Panda Manila, di ba? So, I was working in JP Morgan Chase. And I was earning a lot now as a manager. But like I said earlier, di ba, I was bored. I was doing the same thing every day. And I wanted to do something else. Parang sa day off, sa extra, parang sa days off and after work, I wanted to do something that challenged me. So I heard about this freelancing thing. Pero dati, like ngayon, you guys are very lucky because you have this conference here, yung work remote. You have so many gurus right now. I saw people are members of or followers, people who follow VA Bootcamp, who follow me, who follow FH Moms. But there's so many communities, there's so many coaches right now that you guys are so lucky. Because before, when I heard about freelancing, I wanted to look into it. I went on the websites, pero there was no information. Wala mga tutorials, wala mga YouTube tutorials on how to get hired, on what skills do I need. I had to learn everything on my own. At that time, we had to learn everything on our own. And that's the back then, that was the biggest challenge, is that there's no information. Diba? No matter how much I dig about information about freelancing, well, there's not enough information out there. There's no, like I said, there's no influencers, there's no tutorials. But right now, kayo, there's so many influencers, there's so many groups, so many pages, so many YouTube videos, diba? So iba yung challenge nyo. The challenge you face right now is that there's so much information, right? There's so many YouTube tutorials, so many courses, coaches, gurus. I saw somebody said, saan ba ako mag-learn ng social media? And so many people had mga suggestions, may course dito, may course doon, may Udemy, and then there's so many different places, right? It's overwhelming. Okay, it's very overwhelming. There's so much information out there, just like over here, mind blown kayo. But first and foremost, I want to cover some basics when it comes to freelancing. So what is freelancing? Okay, so first and foremost, freelancing refers to being self-employed. I'm sure most of you know this, but I'm just going over this just in case. It means that ikaw yung boss sa sarili mo. Okay? You do work, you get paid for it. You can get paid by the hour. You can also get paid by the project. Okay, and I have some examples here. I know it's confusing yung description here, but I have some examples here. Makeup artists, they are self-employed. So when somebody hires makeup artists, let's say may wedding, diba? Or may party, diba? Somebody hires makeup artists, they go, they do their job, they get paid. And then tapos na, that's it, right? And then yung iba, let's say makeup artists, mga, I don't know, may mga corporate shoots, let's say every month, diba? So may continuous projects yung makeup artists with a certain company, right? They do their work, they get paid either by the hour or by the project, and that's it. Pero they're not employed. Hindi sila employed. Naka-freelance sila. So meaning wala silang, it's not stable job that they have with the company, and then the company doesn't tell them how to do their job. Sila bahala how they're going to do it, as long as they get it done. Diba? And that's the same with freelancing. What matters is that we get the job done. Doesn't matter what time we do it, what method we do it, basta matapos siya by the deadline. Yung mga massage therapists, same thing, very similar. Yung ibang freelancer are also mga handyman. Okay, you call a handyman because you need their help. They do a project for you, they do work for you, pero you're not employing them. Diba? So that's what a freelancer is. They do work for different companies, even though they are not directly employed by the company. Okay. And what are some other examples? Aside from makeup artists, manghihilot, and handymen, what are some other, discuss nyo sa chat. What are some other examples of mga freelancers that we're more familiar with? Because I'm trying, in the offline world, sa hindi online. What are more examples of offline freelancers aside from these job roles? So yung iba na so much information daw, I'm seeing it here. What are some other roles? Now, when it comes to online freelancing, we also have online freelancers. And this is like the same thing. These are people who work, who do projects, who do certain jobs for certain companies, but they're not employed by them. Graphic designers, they make logos, kahit hindi sila employed sa company. Writers, they help write blog posts or content or sales copy or emails, even though they're not employed by a company. Ako dati web designer, I'd make a website for a company, for different companies, but I wasn't really employed. I do projects for them. Graphic designer, models, tutors, VA, virtual assistant, online rin, eventologists, photographers, great, real estate, tutors, wedding planners, great examples, perfect. So you understand what freelancing is, and this is just in the online world. Now, what is the gig economy? It's part of our topic today. Tinatawag nating gig economy. Ang gig economy is because of the project-based nature of a lot of freelancers. Yung up and down, masyadong up and down yung freelancing world. Okay. So a lot of us freelancers, like before, I remember before there was like 1 month na apat na website. I had to do 4 websites. Tapos before wala akong assistant dati. And I had to do 4 websites na one. Tinapos ko naman, pero I was super busy, di ba? And then the month, parang 2 months after that, wala akong project. And that's how it is sometimes. Na may super strong months ka, you might be earning several 100,000 pesos, and then a few months later, 10,000 lang. So it requires discipline. Okay, and we see this sometimes in freelancers na, dami akong pera ngayon ah. Sige, bongga, bili ako ng bahay or ng bahay, ng kotse or something. And then a few months later, nahirapan. Kala ko dami mong project, dami mong pera, ubos lahat eh. So it requires financial discipline. Just, most of you don't have this problem yet, and it's a good problem to have. But just to let you know that this is something that exists, and you have to look out for it. One way to look out for it is you get a client that pays you consistently. Kahit hindi siya big projects, like yung VA work, usually it's consistent. You get paid consistently, even though you get paid less than what you want to, pero at least consistent siya. So in case may down months ka, you have that consistent work. So that's how the gig economy works, is that may up and down. Just like sa photographers, right now, walang mga events, diba? Photographers before, dami lang events, dami mga weddings or parties. Ngayon, wala. So up and down, yung project-based nature. Pero what's great about online is may internet man palaki. Even the pandemic, daming websites, diba? In fact, it's been growing, it's been booming. So we see that there's always a need, even during times like this, right? Unless wala ng internet. Yung mga questions, guys, type it in the Q&A portion. You'll see it on top. Okay, find the video editor's tutor. Sige. So you might be wondering, especially if you're a newbie, what kind of work can you do as a freelancer? So here's just a list over here. Ang daming mga work that you can do here. Data entry. Let me just summarize like the basic ones here. Data entry. What can this consist of? Is I did data entry before a long time ago, wherein there was parang a magazine and a scan, and then I just had to type it into Microsoft Word. Simply. You guys can do that, right? Kaya nyo ba gawin yun? Yung data entry? Let me know in the comments. Data entry, yes. Transcription. One transcription is podcast transcription. So, ano yung mga podcasts? Let's say mga ganito, diba? You're listening to me right now. There are mga workshops. Transcription is just typing what I'm saying. That's it. Typing what the speakers are saying. So what you do is you watch the video, you pause, type, change the speed and so on, and that's transcription. So a lot of people ask, hey, hindi ako pwede sa online, hirap nun ah. Pero let me ask you, can you do data entry? Can you do transcription? Kaya nyo ba gawin yun? Diba? You're gonna say, yes, data entry. Yes, I'm a transcriptionist. May sabi dito, diba? Sige, email, calendar managing emails, managing calendars, using Word, Excel, PowerPoint, office applications, doing research online, social media, galing ng mga Pinoy basta social media, website management, e-commerce store management, social search engine optimization, web design, Facebook and Google ads, email copywriting, blog writing, graphic design, yung mga logos, ganun, illustration, yung mga drawings, iba yun, programming, bookkeeping, and many more. So there are so many different things that you can do as a freelancer. And if you don't know where to start, just look at this list here. Okay, I'm sure that there's like 1, 2, 3, like which of these can you do? Like which of these can you guys do on this list? Or baka there are other things na, especially sa mga newbies na who are wondering, saan ba ako mag-start? Like, can I go into freelancing? Look at this list here and tell me, list it down. Like, what can I do here? PDF to Microsoft Word. Internet research, gusto talaga na ma-master yan. Just doing research yung mga Google searches, diba? Customer service, diba? Yeah, type it here, especially sa mga newbies. Yung mga existing freelancer, you can say what you do, diba? We have somebody, I think I saw a bookkeeper, I saw a graphic designer here in the chat. So yeah, you can say that there. Sige. So Now, the challenge, the challenge for a lot of people is, what do I do, right? Where do I start? And we kind of answered that earlier, right? We had this list over here. But a lot of people are wondering, saan ako mag-start? Saan ba ako magsimula as a freelancer? Okay. And a lot of people are saying, I want to get into websites, I want to get into SEO or ads or bookkeeping later on, but I don't know it right now, but I want to start freelancing. So what I usually tell people who have this dilemma is, you can start as virtual assistants. You can start as a virtual assistant. Yung virtual assistant, what is a virtual assistant? A virtual assistant is pang a general all-around freelancer. Alam mo yung mga office assistants, di ba? Yung mga office assistants who work for, they have a boss, di ba? And they say, okay, assistant, I need you to make this phone call. Oh, assistant, I need you to check my email. Assistant, I need you to find this on the internet. I need to print this document. I need you to type this in Excel. Ganun. Yun yung virtual assistants. They're all around. Iba-ibang mga trabaho ginagawa nila. They know the basics of different skills, pero they're not an expert. Like assistant, I want you to type this in Excel, di ba? Pero you won't say, hey assistant, I need you to create this formula in Visual Basic and create pivot tables and pivot charts Excel. Kasi hindi sila expert in certain areas, pero they know the basics of the list earlier. They know the basics of a lot of those areas. And what we teach people is to become virtual assistants when they're starting out, because it's the easiest place to start. Most of us know how to use Microsoft Word or Excel, can do data entry, can do web management, can do researching, diba? Yeah, most of us can do that. So that's why I always tell people, you can start up as a virtual assistant, right? And then later on, you can do other things. So when I started out, I started out working as a virtual assistant during my after work, during weekends. I was working in Chase. But during my weekends, I was able to start doing online work, virtual assistant, and I was able to earn 30,000 a month. Na sideline. So naisip ko, if I can earn 30,000 a month na sideline lang, na on my days off, how much more if ginawa ko tong full time? So that's when I quit. That's when I got tired of working in the call center, I quit, and I said, okay, I'll focus dito sa freelancing. And ayun, ito pala, I quit. There are a lot of things that happen in between. We don't have like the time to go over my entire story here, but I was able to travel the world because of freelancing. I was able to touch other people's lives because of freelancing. Like, this is one of our students here. I'm just going to share her message here. Hello, Sir Jason. I would just like to say thank you for the encouragement and motivation, especially sa WAP, yung dating group, at sa fellow WAPers ko. Right now, it's Flip. Although di po ako active mag-post every day, po akong nag-check sa FB, lurker ang peg, may stalker na kayo. Even nung nag-live kayo, I was watching and I keep notes po sa lahat. Other than that, I'm excited to let you know na may client na po ako, and so far maayos po yung takbo ng trabaho ko. Nabibili ko na po yung mga needs ng baby at ko, at thankfully di na po kami nakahiga sa karton ngayon. Di na rin po ako nakaupo lang sa sahig habang nagpipindot ng laptop. Di na rin po kami kumakain ng noodles sa gabi. At lalong di na rin po ako umiyak bago matulog kasi failed na naman. Nakaupo na po ako, although di pa ganun kakomportable ang chair ko. Maayos naman ang table ko. I hope po you will continue helping others. Plano ko sana i-share to sa group. Kaya lang po baka saka na kapag talagang okay na ako. And she shared her story. Again po, thank you. And pinag-ipunan ko talaga yung VA bootcamp, which she enrolled in eventually after this. May alkansiya na po ako para dyan. Kasali po kayong ang family niyo sa mga dasal ko. So this is what I was, di ba sabi ko kanina, you can bless others and help others in freelancing. And this is like one of the people I was able to help before. And she's, of course, as you can see here, she is happy and successful now, right? Sige. So just to kind of close it out, I kind of rushed through this presentation. Tama pala yung time. You might be wondering, what can you prepare to become a freelancer? So hopefully this presentation kind of enlightened you. I know it's only a 30-minute presentation. I can talk about this for hours, go into so much detail, pero this is just to kind of give you an overview. Okay. So if this is what you're thinking of doing, most of you guys I know are working, diba? Are you guys working? Sino bang working dito? Let me know. Sino bang working dito? And if you're working right now and you're thinking, okay, I want to become a freelancer. So this is what you need. This is what you need to prepare. Okay? You need to prepare mentally. Okay? Study about freelancing. Learn more about freelancing. That's what you're doing right now. But just get the basic information and study skills that you can use, study skills that you can apply and you can use as a freelancer. Second is emotionally. Get ready to be rejected. Okay. When you're freelancing, when you're first starting out, I saw somebody said earlier, it's hard to get established. It's hard because you will get rejected many times. You will get rejected before you get accepted, before you parang get hired for a project or for a job. You will, most of the time you'll get rejected. Like a lot of people, it's 1 out of 30. They apply for 30 jobs, they get hired for 1. So a lot of people, they're not ready emotionally. They get rejected 5 times, but then they give up. So if you want to do this, you have to get ready to be rejected. Prepare a strong will to keep pushing. Remember why you went into freelancing, to help your family, to prepare for your future. Okay? So that's what you need to do to prepare emotionally. Technically, computer and internet. Even if it's not your own computer, not your own internet, but you have access to them. Financially, if you're going to quit, have an emergency fund. We said it's a gig economy, so there are ups and downs. So have an emergency fund just in case, and optionally have another source of income. Okay, so this is what you need to prepare to become a freelancer. All right, if you want to learn more about me, about us in the VA Bootcamp, please connect with us here. We have a free course. You can go to this website, free virtual assistant course, freevacourse.com. Okay, so you can just go to that website, and we have a 5-day free course just giving you the basics about working online, working from home, and becoming a virtual assistant. We have a Facebook group. Just do a search for Freelancers in the Philippines. You can find our Facebook group there, or you can send me an email. My team members usually check the email, and it's over at jason@vabootcamp.ph. All right, so that's it for the presentation. Thank you guys for staying on. I think we covered a lot naman in 30 minutes. Do you guys agree na marami tayong cover kahit 30 minutes lang? And this is where you can connect to learn more. And if you have any questions, over here, click on that link at the very top in the chat, and then you can go there and be able to post your questions there. So June, are we going to go to Q&A?
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much for that presentation. Amazing, amazing presentation. Okay. So I noticed this is the story is basically, it's your way of giving back, because you got so much from freelancing. This is basically your way of saying thank you. It's thank you and helping other people, right?
And helping others, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, so we're gonna go ahead. We're a little bit out of time, but we want to answer the top questions that you have. And the number one is actually, is there an age limit for remote work in general?
No. Short answer, no. As long as you can do stuff on a computer. Now, I know people who are in their 60s who are able still to do work. So it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, what age, what gender, what education you have, as long as you can get the job done.
Right, right. Exactly. There's no discrimination in age.
Exactly.
You get the work done, it gets done, right? Second, and I guess this is going to be our last question. I would like to ask if we are going to do some training so we can land a job in order to work remote. Well, I guess this is something for the
this is already
the
free course. They can go there.
Right, exactly.
Another one if we have time.
Yeah, let me see. Let me check the list. I know that this is no longer the case nowadays, but may I know if employers still have an age preference for their applicants? Are employers willing to hire? Okay, this is still regarding the age. I think it has the insecurity right there, right? That they feel that parang naiwanan na sila ng panahon. Can I still catch up, right? So and I'm seeing that most of the questions are also regarding the training. Jason has already provided the links that you can go to where you can get the training, and I think that would be a good idea for you to check it out, especially if you are still undecided, like, oh, do I really want to do development? Do I want to do design? VA positions are the perfect place for you to start, because you can try out everything. And then, you know, once you find out, you figure out which one you like, you can go through that and, you know, pursue that career.
There's a question in the chat that I'd like to answer, actually.
Yes,
if we have
go
time.
ahead.
It's from Henry Chu. I don't know if you posted it there, but like I said, Sir Jason, what was the biggest challenge when you transitioned from corporate setting to freelancing? Okay. So yeah, the biggest challenge when I transitioned is myself, actually. So it's not really the clients, it's not really like learnings, but and this is what a lot of people face. It's themselves. You are your own worst enemy, in the sense that if you don't have a boss, who are you going to answer to? And it's only yourself. So you have to be the one. You have to be the one to push yourself. You have to be the one to parang push yourself to get up in the morning. Hindi na nakahiga, hindi lang mag-Netflix the whole day, and to do work. Because otherwise, unlike in the corporate, if you don't do your work, somebody's gonna pester you. Here, you have to do it yourself. So that's the biggest challenge, is getting over that and being able to motivate yourself. But being your own manager and being able to motivate yourself and push yourself to keep going even when you're tired, even when you don't feel like it. And yeah, so that's the biggest challenge with myself. Ayun.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Totally agree. No, we're running out of time. I wish we had more. And thank you again so much, Jason, for coming on board. You know, I think this is.
Thank you so much, Jude,
this
for
is
having me.
Yeah, this is amazing that we're kind of working collectively. You know, all of the freelancers and remote workers in the Philippines to help other Filipinos. You know, to know more about remote working. All right. So everybody, next up is Trish. She's going to be talking about how to rock your virtual interviews. And so if Jason has prepared you on what you need to do, you know, to be right before you apply for work, what are the skills you need to have? Well, Trish is going to prepare you how to show up to those interviews the right way so that you close the deal, right? It's the one thing for you to get the interview. So, you know, to get to the door, there's another part that you need to do right after you get into the door. And we'll have to talk about that. All right, we will be right back. Thank you again, Jason. See you in a bit. Hi, everybody. I'm back again. So I am here to introduce Trish Surema. Trish is an international recruiter who specializes in branding, program management, and recruiting people across the Asia-Pacific region. She has 10 years of recruiting experience, hiring people across a multitude of industries, seniorities, and functions. She has worked with organizations such as Microsoft and Johnson & Johnson, and she also co-leads Women at Microsoft, which is very close to my heart as well, Women in Tech, and leads a variety of projects of hiring different types of talents, as well as mentoring job seekers to find their next best career move. So she will be talking about how to rock your virtual interviews today. And if in case you have any questions, you do have the Mentimeter, you can also put it in chat. We're monitoring it you. So without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and present Trish.
All right, so I think we are on air. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the intro, June. It's my first time doing this on this platform, so please forgive me for any technical difficulties. But thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. As June mentioned, I am here to talk to you about how you can rock your video interviews. So I can't see any comments. I can't see like your beautiful faces, but just put in all of your questions on the chat box so that we can answer them later. So I know that going through interviews might be a bit nakakakaba. Like, it's not something that we always do. That's why we tend to be quite nervous when it actually happens. But in reality, there are certain ways for you, like certain things for you to do for you not to be as nervous in your interviews. In particular, this afternoon, I want to talk about how you can best do your interviews on a remote setting, because usually most people would have probably had face-to-face interviews, but for remote interviews, you have to look for like different ways, and you have to be a bit conscious about some of the preparations that you would need to take for you to be successful, right? So this afternoon, in the next 20 minutes, I'll be talking about the advantages and disadvantages of video interviews. Next is I will talk a little bit about how to best prepare for your interview, what you do on the actual interview itself, and what you can do afterwards so that you can close off that deal as much as possible. So let's talk about some of the challenges for remote interviews. The first one is it limits nonverbal communication. So when you're speaking with somebody face-to-face, typically you would be able to see how interested they are in what you're saying because of, let's say, how they sit, like if they're leaning back, or maybe they have their arms crossed or whatnot. But if we are on a video interview, we can't see, like I have my arms crossed, but you can't see that, right? So it limits that nonverbal communication on, on that overall equation of you getting to know the other people. So that's one consideration that you have to kind of think about. Next is it actually also hinders the natural flow of conversation. Sometimes you're not quite sure if the person you're speaking with is already done talking or if they're just thinking. Sometimes, and I've experienced this a lot, the internet connection would be quite bad and there will be some lags between the conversation, and sometimes you talk over each other. So those are just some things that you need to be conscious of when doing your video interview. However, I really think that the benefits far outweigh the risk, right? The first benefit, I think, is that you can have your notes. So if you're someone like me, I cannot memorize everything on the top of my head. I need to have bullet points of the things that I want to talk about. And that's what I'm doing right now. But having a video interview, you have that advantage of preparing your notes and putting that somewhere in your computer. Just make sure that you don't read it, because this is what you will look like, right? Hi, my name is Trish. My experience is XYZ. So, but if you just look at the bullet points of what you want to talk about and then keep your eye contact on the camera, that would be, just perfect for your interview. Next is that you have longer times in between your interview. So if you've had interviews in the past, usually what they do is that they schedule back-to-back sessions for you so that you don't have to go to the office, again and again. But with a virtual interview, since it's virtual, you're not really going to the office, they can schedule it with huge gaps of time in between so you can actually rest and take a breather. So I think that's one huge benefit that you can take into consideration. The last one is travel issues. If you have experienced the traffic in EDSA, it's not fun, right? But with a virtual interview, you don't have to worry about traffic. You don't have to worry about being mapawis kasi nag-jeep ikaw or nag-bus ikaw. You just have to, just show up, prepare, make sure that you're comfortable, and start your interview. So I think for me, that is such a huge benefit, because the stress that you get when you travel to an interview adds up on your overall anxiety. But if your interview is online, it would make things a little bit easier for you. Okay, so let's talk about how you can prepare for the interview. And there are two parts that I want to discuss, right? Number one is on the technology. So there are 5 things I placed on the screen. Let's talk about the first one, is lighting and framing. So if you've seen like YouTubers, or like if you're somebody who likes to take selfies, you know that having a proper light and having like a nice angle to frame your face or frame yourself on the interview is going to be very critical. So number one, lighting. Major tip is that make sure that your light is on the side or in front of you, not behind you. Because if it's behind you, it will be against the light and you will just be a shadow. So they won't be able to see your face. Framing. Framing is important because we don't want to be looking at, like your double chin or upside your nose. So my tip is for you to either get, those laptop stands so that the camera can be like at eye level, like what my current setup is right now. Or you can, like if you don't want to spend for like a laptop stand, you can consider getting some books put your laptop on top of that, and then, level it up with where your eye level is. That way you can have like a really good angle, and it will not be distracting your interviewer during the conversation. Next is sound, okay? So I think sound is more important than the lighting and the framing. Because yes, you look pretty, yes, you look handsome, but if they cannot understand what you're saying because there's background noise, or the microphone on your computer is not very good, it's not going to make for a very good interview result. So my suggestion for sound is go to a part of your house wherein the room is a bit separate from where the action is. Try to schedule your interviews in the time of the day where everybody is doing something else. So if you have like an 8:00 a.m. interview when your mom is making breakfast, and then your dad is watching TV, and then your siblings or your children are playing, it's going to be very difficult to control all of that extraneous noise, right? But if you say schedule it in the afternoon, for example, like 2 p.m., everybody is napping, or the children have online classes. So, that would be a better option for you to be able to reduce the sound. I also recommend the use of headphones. So if you have like your laptop has a microphone already, sometimes if you're far, we won't be able to hear you quite properly. But if you have headphones like this one, you can put the mic near your mouth, so that the sound would come out better when you speak with other people. Next is internet. So internet, we all know that not all areas of Manila has really good and stable internet. Based on preference, what I would like to recommend to you is that, number one, try to plug your laptop to your router directly, so that the connection would be at the best that it can be. If that's not possible, try to make sure that your Wi-Fi is stable. So I'm not an expert with internet, but if ever you have an interview happening that day, make sure to limit your use for the internet for that day, for not only for yourself but also for your family. Because the more bandwidth you use in the day, the less bandwidth you will have when you have your interviews, and that's usually when the connections struggle. So just think about that when you kind of do your interviews as well. Next is the software. Okay, so right now we're using Zoom. Usually we use Microsoft Teams or Skype, and there are also like other video conferencing options out there like WebEx as well. So make sure that when you receive the interview invite from your hiring manager, just research online how to use that software, so that when you dial on, you're not lost like me, wherein you kind of figure out how to share your screen, how to turn on your video and whatnot. The best way for you to be able to look prepared for the interview is just really getting to know the technology that you will be using. So that's that for software. The last piece of advice with regard to technology is test your setup. So sometimes, like for Zoom or Microsoft Teams, there's a way for you to test your speakers without calling anybody, or test your microphone quality without calling anybody. So that's something that you can explore. If you want to take it a bit further, you can try to have a friend call you through that software, so that you know that your setup is pretty good for an interview already. Okay, all right. After the technology, let's focus on yourself, right? So what are the things that you need to do in terms of presenting yourself online? Next, okay. There you go. So body language. Okay, body language is going to be quite important for you because it's part of the nonverbal behavior as well. So just try to be conscious of that. When you do your interviews, make sure that there is that eye contact that I was talking about earlier. So try to make sure that the camera or the video of your interviewer is near where your camera is, so that there's kind of like an eye contact happening. Sometimes what other people do is that they put the video of the interviewers like on the side or on like a dual monitor. So you kind of look like that, but then like you're talking to your interviewer, so it doesn't look very professional, right? Or it doesn't look very, like the connection wouldn't be there as much. So try to look at the camera when you have your interview. Another tip is gestures. Like, okay, for me, I am a type of person who also speaks with their gestures. So that's if you're like me, consider to put the camera a little bit further away so that those gestures would be seen. But also at the same time, try not to overdo it because that might be a bit distracting as well. So yeah, that's it for body language. Next is get comfortable. So make sure that the room that you're in has good temperature. I remember a time wherein I was interviewing for a role, and the room that I was in was very, very hot. While I was in the interviews, as in tagaktak yung pawis ko, guys, and it was not a good look. But yeah, try to make sure that the temperature of the room is okay, you're comfortable, the seat that you're sitting on is comfortable as well, so that you can focus more on the conversation rather than your overall position while you're doing the interview. Next is, what do you wear? Okay, so with regard to the outfit, it's going to be quite similar if you did like a face-to-face interview. My general advice, or the general advice of recruiters, is to dress up one level higher. So if you know that the company that you're interviewing for is more casual, try to dress up with a colored polo shirt or like a nice blouse. If you know that the company that you're going to interview for is a bit more formal, try to wear a suit or a blazer on top of your shirts. That way, you kind of show respect that you dress up appropriately for the interviews, even if it's just at home. Next is do your research. Again, this is something that is going to be quite similar with you doing a face-to-face interview as well. Two things that I recommend for you to look into while you do your research is, number one, research the company. So one option is for you to look at the company website, but most candidates miss out on researching with what is happening on the news. So for instance, let's say you get an interview with Microsoft. Instead of just going to our career site and getting to know us and our values, try to look at what the press is saying about Microsoft as well, because there might be some things that's happening in the market that might be helpful for you to fully understand the role better. So let's say the company, there was a post wherein this company is going to grow their operations in Manila, right? So okay, so maybe that's the reason why there is that vacancy, right? So look at those news articles and see if they would be relevant for the role that you're applying for. Next is the JD. So the job description tells you a lot. So it can tell you a little bit about the company, but it can also tell you a little bit about what they're looking for in the role. So if the job description says we're looking for somebody with leadership qualities and whatnot. So if you read between the lines, why are they looking for leadership quality? Are they looking for somebody who would be eventually trained up to be, the next team lead for that team? So think about those things. Read between the lines of the job description, and it will definitely help you on your conversation. Next is interview format. So there's a lot of ways for us to be able to do interviews. The most common one is like a one-on-one interview, like a one-on-one direct conversation. I ask you questions and you answer. But there are also panel interviews that's being done virtually. There's also demo interviews. For instance, if you're a technical person and the interviewer would want you to do a demo of how you code or how you design if you're in an artistic or a creative job. So think about that. Ask your recruiter what is expected of you on that interview so that you come in better prepared. So that is it in terms of preparing for your interview. Now, you might be wondering, okay, why do we need to interview in the first place? And what are we looking for as recruiters? So really, the interviews is the best way for us to be able to gauge how you would be, fit for the overall job that we have. So I listed down for the top four things that we check during interviews. The first one is you're fit for the job. right? So do you have the skill sets, or do you have the mental aptitude to be able to succeed in this role? So those, like, basically the question is, can you do the job that we have, right? So that's number one. Number two is the team. Do you have the people skills that we need for somebody to work well with a team? Or are you also a great team player, wherein you would raise your hand if there are high volumes, or you would look into stretch projects and things like that. So finding that good vibe with the team is going to be quite critical as well. Next is fit for the company. So I talked a little bit earlier about the company values that you will find on the website. So just take a look at how those values reflect on your personal values as well. So for instance, for me, one of Microsoft values is growth mindset. And that's something that is quite critical for me, because I'm not somebody who knows everything, and I question a lot of things. Before, I thought I was just asking silly questions, but what's good about the fit of myself and the organization is that Microsoft is also a learn it all culture. So asking a lot of those questions does not bother other people. So think about how your own values relate with the values of the company that you will be joining. Right. And then the last one, so not all companies do this, but if a company looks into your potential, then that's a good sign, because they would be able to see, like, let's say you don't have all of the requirements for the job, but you have 8 out of 10, for instance. So they would be able to identify and see your willingness to grow, and your willingness to grow with the organization as well. And that way, like, it's a positive thing for us to see, because we could potentially see you as one of, say, the future leaders of the organization. So that's why we interview. Now, let's move on to on the interview itself. So again, I said earlier that Microsoft is not like a know-it-all culture, but from an interview standpoint, I suggest for you to have all of the answers necessary about you, because the interview is going to be all about you, and the spotlight is on you. So make sure that you have answers ready for whatever questions that would come your way. It's impossible for you to know all of the questions, but let me give you 2 tips for you to be able to answer most of them. So number one is the competency assignment. So usually when you interview with a company, each of the interviewers that you meet will be assessing you on certain competencies. By competencies, I mean certain things that are skills that are important for the job, right? So for example, the first interviewer will be focusing on teamwork. The second interviewer will be focusing on, say, like, your technical ability. The third interviewer will be focusing on, let's say, leadership qualities. So for you to know what the competencies are, the 2 main things that you should look out for is, number one, read the job description. What are the major qualities that they're looking for based on the job description? Did they say, did they say something around, being proficient in Microsoft Office, or did they say, collaboration or teamwork or whatnot? So those are the competencies, and expect that the interviewers that you will be meeting will be assessing you based on those competencies as well. So once you have those competencies, the next thing that you need to do is to prepare speaking points. So what are speaking points? Basically, let me give you an example. If one of the competencies that you have identified on the job description is, let's say, let me think. Let's say it's leadership, right? Or collaboration. So try to look for examples in your past work experience wherein you have shown an instance wherein you collaborated well with your team. For instance, like, if you can see here, I put in context, action, outcome, and measure of success. So how you would frame that speaking point regarding teamwork and collaboration is that, during last year, the volumes were really high. and the entire team was struggling because the process in which we can finish the transaction is too long. So that's a context. Action is, so what I did was I worked on a process improvement project so that we can cut down the processing time of the transaction from 10 minutes to 5 minutes. So that's your action. Yun yung ginawa mo tungkol dun sa context. Next is outcome. So what happened after? So you can say something like, because of that project that I did, we can finish our work in time and our stakeholders are happier because we can close transactions at a faster rate, and it saves them more money rather than the old process that we were doing in the past. So that's the outcome, and also kind of the measure of success as well. If you can possibly find how much time you saved or how much money you saved for the company, those would be really helpful answers as well. So that's the basic guideline that you can do in terms of just preparing answers for your interview. Read the job description, read the company site, and look at the values of the company. Take those competencies and think of situations in the past using this format for you to be able to answer most of the questions that they will be asking. So remember that: context, action, outcome, and the measure of success. All right? Okay. Next one is bring in the questions. So usually when we go into interviews, sometimes I speak with candidates and they don't have questions for me. As a recruiter, sometimes I feel like I kind of think if they're really interested in the role, or if they kind of fully understand the role, or if they're really engaged in the overall role itself. So when you get into the interview stage, make sure that you bring some questions with you. So one of the advice that I shared with you earlier was to look into news articles. So maybe you want to ask about the next big plans that they have in the organization, and how this role can help with those overall growth plans that you have. So just make sure that you have questions prepared, because it shows your enthusiasm about the role, your dedication for you to fully understand the role better. And it's also a chance for you to get to know the company and even like this working style of your manager. So your questions doesn't need to be all about the company itself. It can also be about the team. It can also be about the working style of your manager. So the more you know about a role, the more you get to fully understand what is going to be expected of you. So as you go through your interview journey, make sure to ask those questions so that you can build a better picture and have a better interview as you go through the stages of the process. Okay, so you might be wondering, when do I ask about salary and benefits? So I would suggest against talking about salary and benefits during the interview. And let's say your interviewer is not a recruiter. And the reason for that is because usually the interviewers are not part of the negotiation process. So they wouldn't even know the answer on, how much the salary is and things like that. My suggestion is for you to focus on the role first, see if it's something that excites you. And then typically the salary conversation happens at the end part of the process once you are selected for the role. Okay. Oh, one more tip for you to kind of think of the best interview questions is for you to imagine that you already have the job. So what are the usual questions that you would ask? So typically that's what I see really successful candidates do whenever I would have conversations with them. So questions like, okay, so if I get this role, what is the measure of success? What does career growth look like? What does the culture look like? Things like that. So those questions would really show how interested you are in joining the company. Okay, we're almost there. So let's talk about the two possible outcomes. It's either you will be getting rejected or you will be getting an offer. So let's talk about rejection first. So number one is know when to follow up. So when you start the recruiting process, make sure to build a relationship with your recruiter and try to understand what the timelines would be, because the chances are you will not be the only person in the interview loop. There might be other people as well. And even if you finish your interview this week, there is a chance wherein they would want to wait to meet everybody first before they move people forward in the next rounds of the interview. So yeah, just understand when you should follow up with the recruiter. If you haven't heard from them like 1 week since your interview, then perhaps that's a good time to follow up. And then let's say they say that, hey, I'm sorry, you were not selected for the role. Like we will reach out to you for another role in the future. So when you do get that kind of message, it is okay for you to ask feedback so that you would know where you can improve on, and what are the things that you can change on your future interviews in other roles as well. So interviews are not just for you to get a job, but it's also an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about your capabilities and what makes you tick as a person and how you can improve yourself from an overall career growth perspective. Okay, so the happier news here is, let's say you get an offer. So when they say like, hey, hi, my name is Trish, I'm your recruiter. Congratulations, you are going to get the offer for XYZ position. So when we get to that stage, this is the perfect time for you to ask more questions about the benefits, about the salary and whatnot. So my advice is, when you get into the salary negotiation phase, is for you to be a champion for yourself, right? If they give you, for example, like a 18,000 starting salary, just try to step back and try to understand your value, right? Do you have friends in the industry who are in the same level of, or the same number of years of experience as you? Is it possible for you to get to understand, how much they're making, so that you have a good benchmark? Another good option as well is that if you have bosses in the past, and let's say your career journey is the same, wherein your boss is just a little bit more senior than you, but they walk the same path as you. So you can ask your boss like, hey boss, is this offer good? Like, is this in line with the market standards? Because the more you know your value as an employee, the more you don't regret the salary that you accept when you get to the offer process. So make sure that you are a champion for yourself and say yes to the opportunity that would be worth it. And always remember, an offer is not always only about the money that you get. It's also about the other opportunities that is tied in with that role. It's also about the other benefits as well. So it's an overall package. Like, would you be liking your coworkers? Would you be liking your manager? Is this a job that you're interested in doing? So take all of that into consideration before you even say yes to an offer. But yes, so when you get to the offer stage, it doesn't mean that you asking questions is done. It really means that it's just more opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about the role so that you can be a champion for yourself. So yes, that's me. Here is the Q&A Mentimeter link. So yeah, just let me know what your questions are, and I'm super happy to answer them.
Thank you so much for that, Trish. So many like golden nuggets in that presentation, and actually, there's a lot of good questions too in the chat.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go ahead and Renz, thank you so much for updating that. Renz is also in the background sending over the questions from the group. We are a little bit short in time, but we can answer. We can still answer a couple, and I think we can go ahead and see here. There's a couple of questions that I would like to hear some answers to.
Sure.
So they said, would you consider hiring somebody who isn't a college graduate or basically high school level only? That's, I think, a lot of insecurity about applying is not having a degree.
Yes.
Mhm.
You know, I totally understand. And Microsoft, personally, there have been some hires that I've done in the past wherein this person did not have like a college degree. um, and like from a local perspective as well, I know a lot, like I have a lot of friends who have been quite successful in their roles with them not having a college degree. And I totally get the insecurity, but at the end of the day, what is important is how you present yourself from an experience standpoint and what skills you kind of show for. Honestly, one of the, like June, I think we talked about this the other day, but we were, one of the things I really want to be changed in the HR industry in Philippines is to remove that college degree requirement, because for some people, eventually when they get into their actual profession, sometimes they don't even practice what they studied in college. So for me, honestly, as a recruiter, what's more important is your actual experience and your potential for growth. So if you can find an organization in the Philippines that's like that, it's a really good sign, because it's not very it's not very what do you call this, very much common for us to be not looking at college degrees. But yes, at the end of the day, I suggest you structure your resume or your CV in a way that you focus on your experience rather than what you finished in college. Like for me, my CV would first emphasize on the skills that I have, the experience that I have, and then at the very bottom is like my college degree, because that's the least important from like in terms of profiles for people with more than say like 5 years experience. I hope that
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just a little bit of fun fact for the rest of the people in the group. I didn't graduate college when I got into freelancing and stuff. I mean, like I was already working, it was like a normal, I was already a project manager when I went back to college to take my degree. But me getting there, I didn't need the degree. It's like after I took it, it kind of like, oh, that was like a checkbox, right? Yeah, it was like it didn't matter anymore. Nobody asks for them, especially in freelancing and in remote working. Typically, we the college degree is something nice to have, not necessarily a requirement, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's
So,
right.
one last question before we go.
Okay.
This is something I think is very interesting. What are the things that you think are deal breakers during virtual interviews? Like, what are the no-nos?
So for me, I think two major things that come into mind, right? Number one is the sound quality. Sometimes it's just really difficult. As much as I want to give you like all of the questions and really try to understand your answers, if the sound quality is not very good, it's going to be very difficult for us to have like a successful conversation. The next one is reading from your laptop or reading from your notes. There has been some time wherein I was interviewing somebody, and literally like this person had glasses, so I could see kind of the reflection on the screen that he was just really reading from like a Word document or whatnot. And it kind of showed to me that this person wasn't fully prepared for the interview, and that concerned me a little bit. But yeah, so I think those two things would be very difficult to kind of get the next interview for. And it really just boils down to preparation, right? It's preparing the technology aspect, but you also preparing yourself as the start of the show during the interviews.
Yeah, that's one thing for me as an interviewer, because I also interview people. I would take note if, for example, you show up in the interview and then you ask me about what was the position again that I was applying for. If you come in and then ask me about the job that you're applying for, there's no second phone call after that. Right? Just shows you're not prepared. Right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I think we have a lot of other questions. I mean, I'm going to share the questions to Trish, and if she has time, she can come back and answer them in the chat. The chat is very lively and active, so people are there sharing their experiences as well. You feel free to join. And Trish, thank you so much for doing this talk, for sharing your knowledge. And I think that's beautiful that we are all coming together with regards to the remote working movement.
Yeah. No, thank you for having me. And I'll quickly pop in the chat box later and answer some questions as well. But yes, thank you so much, everybody. I hope that was super helpful. And thanks as well, June, for having me today.
All right. Bye, guys. See you in a bit.
Bye, everybody.
All right. We are back. Thank you so much for those who stayed. This is our last talk for today. And we will be talking about the future of work, how remote work is shaping the global workforce. So the first few talks that we've been discussing, we were kind of more focused about freelancing within the Philippines. And then with Trish, we talked about the recruitment process and showing up in the interviews. It's more about us. But this time, this talk that we reserved for the last, we kind of want to look outward, right? So now that we know all about this amazing things about working remotely, how will this change us? How is it going to affect us as a country, as a nation, as globally? How will it affect everybody? So I have here with me 3 amazing women, making impact and making changes, each and every one of them. And I'm gonna go ahead and start introducing from, there's no particular order, right? So I'm gonna start with Zaina. Zaina Xavier, you are from Kinsta and she has been helping international startups and scale-ups with their HR needs for over a decade. And she's focused on creating great environments that allows people to flourish and do their best work. So currently, Zaina is the head of HR for Kinsa, right? And Tracy, a very special place in my heart. I actually work with Tracy. She is the co-founder of Grow Remote, doing amazing things in Ireland. She'll tell us a little bit more about that, in a while. And basically, they are helping people make remote work normal, or remote work local. Sorry, our tagline, I forgot. But basically, we are going to be talking about what's the impact of remote work in Ireland as well, right? And Marjorie is an automatician. He actually works for Automatic, and born and raised in the Philippines. She's a true testament of Filipino world-class talent. And I invited them all here so you can see an example, like broaden your outlook, not just within our country, but outside as well. So ladies, I want to give you a chance to speak up, so it's not just me. Let's go ahead and start with, well, I'm going to go back to the order. Zaina, you can go ahead first.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for having me today, June. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
Tracy.
Hi, so I'm Tracy. As June said, I'm co-founder of Grow Remote. In Ireland, we started off as a non-profit that help communities to grow and thrive, and we use remote work to do that. So we concentrate on employment, and we make remote work both visible and accessible in local communities across the world now. We're in 17 countries, and we were volunteer until September of last year when we got in a full-time team because we got funded by the Irish government, which was very exciting. So Ireland is our really biggest base. We've got 70 communities all across Ireland, mostly in rural and regional Ireland. And then beyond that, we're dotted across the world. Thank you, June, for having us.
Thank you for coming. Marge?
Hi, I'm Marjorie Asturias, and I'm Director of Growth R&D at Automatic. So Automatic is the parent company of WordPress.com, but you might also know some of our other products. like Jetpack, Akismet, WooCommerce, and Tumblr, as well as other fine software products. I am currently based in Colorado in the United States, but I was born and raised in the Philippines. So mabuhay sa mga kababayan ko sa Pilipinas. Super happy to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and talk to you more about Automatic. We are, again, a fully remote company, has been since 2005, our founding. We have a little over 1,300 employees in, I believe, 77 or 78 countries around the world, including quite a few in the Philippines. I think maybe 10 or 12 in the Philippines. We'd love to see more, though. So I hope that this opportunity, talking to you and sharing our story with your audience, encourages more Filipinos to work for Automatic.
Right, right. Great, ladies. Okay, I'm gonna go on with the questions, right? Let me start from the top. So companies like Automatic and Grow Remote and Kinsta have been remote from the beginning, right? Even before COVID hit, we were already remote. So that we had a huge head start when it comes to hiring remotely. And so because our audience right now are mostly talent, they're job seekers, we want to know, like, what is it that you look for when you're hiring for people?
From my perspective, I think it depends a lot on the role. There'll be very specific skills we're looking for, and they're in our job descriptions. We give you all the answers of what we're looking for. We're not trying to trip people up at all. But on top of that, there's also the values that we have. We've just been through a big process at Kinsta around looking at our values and what makes us unique and what we want to keep as we grow. And it's all around kindness and respect, and our customers being the center of what we do and delivering great quality. So you can usually find all of those on the websites. And I would guarantee you that during the interview process, there'll probably be some questions designed to assess those competencies for all companies, and they'll probably have their values on their websites too.
Thank you, Zaina. Tracy, you were recently hiring.
You were, yes. Yeah. Oh, so Grow Remote, back to our culture, we're about bias for action. So we're really looking for doers. But then specifically, I'm going to flip the question kind of a tiny bit and go into what we're hearing from employers on building a remote ready workforce. And there are really two things that I think are really interesting. So first is knowing enough about remote work to know whether or not it's for you and where to find it. So knowing companies like Automatic, GitLab, knowing their names, who they are, a little bit about them. And then as you go forward, one of the biggest kind of skills areas is written communication. So are you really strong on written communication? Something that I had to improve consciously because you're not used to it in the old way of working. And so I guess those are the two things. To flip your question a tiny bit, June, sorry.
All right. Oh, that was very good answer. Marjorie. A lot of people would want to apply to Automatic. What are you looking for?
Yeah, and actually, if you are interested, you can go to automatic.com. That's mattic.com, and click on the Work With Us page. We have a lot of jobs open. And to kind of echo what Zaina had said, obviously the skills that we're looking for are kind of dependent on the role. We have everything from developers, programmers, to support engineers, content people, SEO, marketers, the vast gamut of roles. But in particular, when we're hiring, we have a fairly unique hiring process in that we have interviews that are both held on Slack as well as over Zoom. And then we also go through a trial project, and that's for any role, regardless of whether it's on the executive level or the support engineer. Everyone goes through a trial process where we assess your skills, and it's a paid trial. This is not a free, you're not working for us for free. It is a paid trial, but it's a way for us to assess your skills and a way for you to decide if this is the right fit for you. And mutually, it's a way to determine how well you would work in a remote distributed workforce, because it does take, a lot of autonomy, a lot of self-motivation and discipline when there's not someone hanging over your shoulder telling you what to do. Written communication is very, very important. We do require that everyone is very proficient in English. and someone who is very self-motivated, very disciplined, and also is used to, and it's really hard to describe, but when you're you should be able to communicate not only synchronously, where you and I are having a conversation right now, but also asynchronously, where you're having a conversation without the expectation, especially over Slack, obviously, that person will not get back to you right away, but they will eventually. So it's there are a lot of folks who think that remote would be great. They can do whatever they want, have a flexible schedule, but it is kind of a different work style and requires a different way of approaching the way you work and the way you communicate. So those are the things we evaluate throughout the entire hiring process.
Right, that's really good to know. Guys, take notes. Right. So moving forward, so we've talked about that most of our audiences are job seekers, and I think I'm not just speaking with the Filipinos, but in general, a lot of them don't know where to find these jobs, right? So what would be your suggestions to these people? What would be your tips? You know, how can they take advantage of these jobs out there?
Well, there are loads of great remote jobs boards out there. We advertise a lot on We Work Remotely. Remote.co is another one that I used to look at. I was going through this process about a year ago, and I knew I wanted to work at a remote company. So I actually bookmarked probably about 20 companies. Kinsta was one of them, Automatic was another, that I really wanted to work for. And every week I would just go through that list of bookmarks and check their careers pages, because some of them will be smaller companies like Kinsta. You know, we only have 150 people. And so there's not a huge budget to advertise on lots of different platforms. We'll only do that with certain roles. So it's worth it just to check the careers page every week. If you bookmark them all, it's super quick. And people will always advertise on their own career pages, in my experience.
Thanks, Zaina. Tracy, what would be your tip?
So finding remote work is the biggest issue, right? So companies are always speaking about the power of remote work and economic impact, etc. If you go into the communities that need the help the most, they have never heard of Automatic, never heard of GitLab, like completely new thing. So there's a couple of things. One is that find other people who are looking too. So sometimes you can get caught up in people who are paid to tell you certain things. So different parts of the machine have different paywalls in front of information. If you find a set of peers who can support you, you can share information as you're going. It can be really noisy. So you're like, who are Automatic? Who are Kinsta? Like, you've never heard of these before, and everything is so new. So having support along that. Grow Remote, we built a free mini course on finding remote work. Everything you need to know is in there. We actually have an Airtable with all of the companies who hire remotely, plus their careers pages. So you have those kind of bookmarked. And then the 3 jobs boards that we say, because it's based around Europe, is We Work Remotely, EU Remote Jobs. And I've forgotten the last one, I can't remember. But anyway, so there's kind of very specific ones that allow you to just, the most important thing as well is that you're no longer looking by country, although it can be by country, you're looking by time zone. So one of the biggest issues that we found in our communities is that in Ireland, say we're not a very big island, obviously, but you have very local communities and then cities. You've got 3 minor cities, but people search for jobs by the area that they're in. And they had to go through a little bit of a shift to now search by a time zone or fully remote. And the other shift that we had to make in the terms of mindset of people within these communities is we always understood remote to be remote from a city and very local to us. So when organizations would announce 10 jobs in some area, it's satellite offices or hub and spoke. We weren't used to remote being fully distributed. So this concept that the jobs could be here, I'm rambling a little bit, but find people who are also on the journey with you so you get straight information. That's it.
Yes, really good advice. The power of community is what we are. Right. Marjorie, what would be your suggestion?
Well, obviously for Automatic, go to our website, click on Work with Us. I'm glad that Zaina mentioned We Work Remotely, because that's pretty much the first one that came to mind for me when it comes to remote work. We have advertised on LinkedIn. We've advertised on, and one of the things we want to do is, because we have a global audience, we are trying to encourage more people from outside of the North Americas. We still hire within the North Americas, but we really want to continue expanding our footprint around the world and really emphasizing diversity and inclusion. And so we are also trying to reach out to different organizations and share, like sharing what job opportunities we have for those who might not think of us when they think of a tech company. And also for specific to, if you're interested in WordPress, and if you're, if you're familiar with Kinsta and Automatic, you're probably whether you're in the WordPress community or adjacent to it. It's a little bit different this year because of COVID, but historically, WordCamps and WordPress meetups are a fantastic way to connect with others in the WordPress community. And there's almost always a jobs board at WordCamps that will display not just on-premise job roles that are open, but also remote companies. The WordPress community seems to be pretty advanced when it comes to thinking about the future of work, and there tends to be a lot of remote opportunities in that space.
Right. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of like connect with other people, right? Like
yeah,
bookmark those jobs boards to make them easier for you to access, and just network and connect with people who are also looking for the same thing. Yes, really great answers, ladies. Our next question is basically, so the pandemic accelerated the digital adoption of most businesses, right? So like if there were 500, let's just say, I'm just throwing a number here, 500 companies before who were hiring remotely before pandemic, that probably increased 200% now, right? Because we can't work, or it's very difficult for us to work. So in the office. So how do you think this will change for other countries? How will this affect the countries, like its people? What would be the overall impact of this?
Well, I think it's a really interesting social experiment. So we're in a really unique time at the moment, and we don't really know what our new normal is going to be like. But I expect that we'll see at least some companies will continue this in future years. And June, we've seen a lot in Lisbon already. There's a really high wage difference between the people who work for international companies and the people who work for local companies, and that creates a big discrepancy between things, and pushes things like rent prices up. It's really hard now for Portuguese people to find affordable accommodation in Lisbon. So I think that's an interesting sort of social side to it, and something that we need to be conscious of, because remote companies will have different compensation strategies, and that's something we're looking at now. Do we pay people the same amount regardless of where they're based, or do we localize salaries a little more? So I think that's something that I'm personally finding really interesting at the moment. But I do think as well that once we move past this period in our history, there is, I see, and I don't know if you guys feel this too, a little bit of a backlash against remote work from some companies for people who weren't ready to be thrust into it. Companies like the ones on this call, we're all doing it already, but there are some companies that just didn't have that documentation, that technology, that mindset already set up. And so they've been thrust into a remote work environment and they're not really ready for it. So I think once people are able to go back to the offices and work from there, I do think we'll see, there will be a shift definitely towards more remote work, but I don't know if it will be as profound perhaps as it could have been.
Right, very interesting. Tracy, what would be your
So
opinion?
for us, ultimately, it has the power to reshape how local communities run. So if you can bring in people with equal access to jobs that you can have in a city, and they can spend both their time and their money locally, then we can build our farmers markets and do all the things that we want to do in our local community. So it's ultimately transformative. But we're paid by the Irish government to hit 4 objectives, and one of those is transition organisations from in-office to remote. And just before I left my last job, I was in Ireland's largest bank embedding remote work in the organisation. And so you can see the challenges that are within large enterprises that haven't had the opportunity to, I suppose there's models for fully remote, there's models for in the office, but this thing of transitioning a huge 250-year-old beast into something that's like location agnostic is mental. So I think we are coming up against challenges. I think together with the Irish government, we set up a training program to build capacity in organizations to be able to manage remote teams. And as part of that, we're seeing where things might go. I think that we have an opportunity now, ahead of hopefully the vaccine coming in and things going back to normal, to either lock in really good behaviors and kind of define what the future might be. So we're working on a change mechanism for that. But what I will say is the biggest thing that we're noticing in working with large organizations is that they say the future is hybrid, but they understand hybrid to be 2 days in the office, 3 days out. So they're like, oh, it's just going to be the same as it was before. It's just that you can do it. I'm like, no, you're going to have second-class citizens. It's going to be, that's going to be way worse. Like, just go back in the office if you want to do that. So it's I think the work that all of the remote companies are doing and sharing their learnings is so pivotal, and it's amazing. We've shared that GitLab handbook maybe 1,000 times, and it's like, you need to go remote first. And they're like, oh, and even just last week, the CEO of a large company who was like, yeah, okay, we need to go fully, go all in. The pin kind of only dropped on remote first. He's like, everybody has to change. Like, yeah, if one is remote, all are remote. And I think that concept of inclusivity, I think that's working really well. So it's not that you're better in the office, you're better outside the office. It's just that you think about people, everybody, when you're doing things, and so everybody feels included, and you get all the benefits of remote work as well. So I'm not totally optimistic about the future, but I don't think, like, our job is to drive change in society, so we need to be a little bit I think we've got a little bit of work to do, and I think that change will come for 3 levels. To finish off, like within organizations, you've got all colleagues and people coming into the organization and what the market is pushing in terms of what employees want, but they've been screaming for remote work for ages. Then you've got people managers who kind of enable it within an organization, but then you have CEOs, real leaders in traditionally office-based organizations, who need to kind of set the vision forward for a world where employment is accessible to you no matter where you are. That's it.
Great answer, Tracy. Right. Okay, Marjorie, what would be your opinion about it?
I agree with everything that Tracy and Zaina said, and I would especially highlight what Zaina mentioned earlier, that I also am unsure of how much of a transformative experience the pandemic will have on the nature of work. When the lockdowns first started happening and everyone had to suddenly go remote overnight, we got a lot of requests from media and from other companies that were all of a sudden realizing, oh my gosh, I have to turn my entire 5,000, 10,000 company into a remote workforce overnight. Can you give us some tips? And I remember attending a conference, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, that was about remote work, and most of the questions were things like, do you wear pajamas while you're working? Do you work from your bed, or do you have an office? And the questions last year was, well, what tools do you use? Can you tell us, like, how do I relate to my prospects, to my sales managers, to my workers? Can you tell us, how to use Slack, how to use Zoom? And it took a while. We were trying to share the message that it's not so much the tools. The tools are there to support you, but it really is, to echo Tracy's point, it really requires a big culture mind shift. You need to be remote first. You can't have one person remote and everyone else can stay in the office, because it really fosters a sense of exclusion for that one person, because I think everyone has had an experience of calling into a conference call in a conference room where you're the only one calling in and everyone is in the conference room. And pretty soon people forget you're in the meeting, and you don't feel like you can participate. So it's about changing the way you think about what it means to actually be working. If you don't see the person in front of you, are they really working? And if, can you trust that they really work? Here at Automatic, we assume positive intent, and we assume that you're working. One of the questions we often get asked is, well, how do you know if someone's actually working and not? Trust me, it doesn't matter if you never see that person, if they're not producing results, because that's how you're measured in a company like Automatic. If you're not producing results, it becomes really obvious very quickly, no matter what your role is. So, things like trust, things like structuring the work so that you are results oriented rather than how many hours you put in, whether you see that person face to face. it requires so much of a grounds up shift in your workplace, your culture, your management style. Tools is one thing, your choice of tools, but really it's a cultural transformation, and it's not going to come overnight. We are still a company that's still trying to figure things out. I think we're a little bit ahead of a lot of companies because we've been doing it for so long, and we're more than happy to share our experiences. But it is something that it's like I said, it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah. Rome was not built in a day, was that the expression, or overnight or something like that? Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's huge benefits to it. And,
Yeah.
there's environmental benefits, there's social benefits. But again, it's going to take a while, partly because it's a huge shift in the way we think about how we work and communicate.
It is a social change, and it affects so many areas, in society, just like what Zaina said, there could be the way that it is affecting Portugal is completely different in the way it is affecting in Ireland and the way it is affecting in the Philippines. So it's so interesting to see how this actually is kind of bleeding out in other areas of our society. But work is very crucial, in our day-to-day life. So I guess that is kind of expected that would happen.
Yeah, and it's interesting, if you don't mind my interjecting, but you mentioned that work is very important to our day-to-day life. But when you're working from home and you're in Zoom, your day-to-day life, I mean, your work, you can see that it's part of a day-to-day life, but it's not all of your life. And so one of the things that that I joke about sometimes is when work from home became sort of the norm over the pandemic, you'd see these articles coming out about, how to make sure that your children behave while you're in a Zoom call, or how to create these virtual backgrounds. And at Automatic, it's such a fundamental part of our culture that, of course, you have a life outside of work, and you're going to have kids, and I have dogs, and my dogs sometimes go in and out of my Zoom conference calls, and I don't even notice. Sometimes they'll bark, and I'll hear kids in the background, and it's normal. It's not something anyone within the company ever questions, because that's all of our circumstances. So, and so it's interesting, funny, but also, I'm a little sad sometimes to see that people are like, oh, well, how, I need to put on a full face of makeup and make sure that my entire background looks like I'm in an office when everyone knows you're at home. Right. So to be kind of authentic and genuine and blend those two things within your everyday life, I would love to see a future where if your child is right behind you drawing something and while you're in a business meeting, no one bats an eyelid.
Right, exactly, to normalize it, basically. Right. Yes, that's what we all want. I do want that. All right, last question, ladies. So in the Philippines, not just in the Philippines, in a lot of other places in the world as well, internet is our #1 roadblock. Okay, it's a really big challenge for us. And sometimes you feel kind of helpless because it's not something one person can change, right? But in your opinion, and I'm sure this is just our opinions, but what can we do collectively to change that? Because in the future, this is going to be, if we are going to go grab global opportunities for remote work, and internet is the lifeblood of remote work, if our internet is bad, we're already behind, right? That's the thing. So how do you propose we change this? What can we do collectively?
Personally, I find that a really tough question. I'm not sure. My only thoughts really are that I agree with you that a stable internet connection that's quick is really essential for remote work. And we're sympathetic, we're a nice company. We understand sometimes things happen. I'm sure all remote companies are the same. But if generally speaking, you don't have a good internet connection, it's going to be really hard to get a good remote job. But I have no knowledge of how we can make that better. So maybe Tracy or Marjorie can help me out here.
No, that's a really hard question. John Reardon is on our board. He's chairperson of Shopify International, and he's chairperson now of our board. And he was on a call recently, and his internet cut off. We're like, yes. So it never happens, but it happened once. So you laid forth, I think, an assumption there around connectivity is the biggest issue. In our experience working particularly with rural and regional communities where that was the presumption that internet connectivity was the biggest issue, it wasn't. It's kind of like electricity. So you can have electricity coming into a house, my best analogy that I have, but if you don't have switches or know what a light bulb is, you're not going to notice any difference in having electricity. So what we found is even when towns and villages got connected, there was a huge gap between that and being able to use it for what the power of the internet could bring to you. So what we did in Ireland to get around that issue was, again, funded by the government. They set up a fund to set up co-working spaces. So they would fund you to build a co-working space in the middle of if you go to a field in Ireland, you might find a co-working space. They're just everywhere. But it's really, really good because what it does is allow, and they're really kind of flexible. So they're not just open working. They'll change, then adapt their space to suit what you need, because it is kind of smaller density areas as well. But what it does is bring everybody together, often in the main village or whatever else it is, and that can be good for bringing vibrancy back. It's not as good as if it was in your house, but it's probably not more than 5 or 10 kilometers away from where you are. So I think that was a good compromise between the two. But for us, the narrative around broadband is the biggest issue, keeps people's eye focused on something that, again, you can't control, you can't change that, but you can create a co-working space and get a remote job. Both of those two things are within your control. So that's my answer on that.
Yeah, that's an amazing answer, Tracy, because I'm basically in the Philippines. We also have, I wouldn't say I'm not sure if maybe DTI can correct me or if I'm wrong, but we do have co-working spaces, in cities, in smaller towns and whatnot, right? And so the thing is, we kind of focus on the internet is slow in my house, so that's why I can't access it. But actually, they can go to the nearest co-working space and work from there, right? And the internet will probably be a lot better than where you are, and the co-working space is probably like a walking distance or much.
Yeah, and it's not ideal. I know there's one, I remember the first time we opened up in a city and I was like, why, what do you want with remote work? And I remember we met a woman, Orna, and she was a single mother. Her kids were old enough that she could work in the house and they could entertain themselves, but not old enough that she could leave the house and she'd be comfortable with them there. So for her, being able to work from home was important. But as we look to kind of make some sort of progress, with what we can do at the moment, it is the best that we can get to.
Right. Yeah. The workaround at the moment while they're working on the pipes, right? And the internet connection. Marjorie, what would be your take?
Well, obviously if we're talking about broadband connection in order to promote remote working, and actually just in general, developing your business in industries, regardless of whether you're remote or you're on premise, your industries really need reliable, strong internet connection. But I would challenge people to think about what it means to have fast internet connection, because now, granted, I do have fast internet here at home, but I have been to the Philippines. I was in the Philippines in December for a couple of weeks, and I was in a very remote village. That's where my mom is from. I don't know if anyone listening is in Calapan, Oriental Mindoro, but I spent a couple of weeks there, and there was some slow internet, there was some fast internet, but there was internet. And if you can access Facebook, you can work remotely. A lot of what we do at Automatic is Slack chats and just working on a Google Doc. Yes, there are Zoom calls, but it's not required to do your work. And there are certain workarounds you can do in order to maybe improve your Zoom calls. You can turn off your video, or again, you can go to a co-working space. Or if, for those automaticians who they're not able to get on Zoom for whatever reason, you can ask your teammates, hey, can we just do this over Slack? There are a lot of different ways you can, again, doing the workarounds. But we have automaticians who have worked off of cruise ships, and cruise ships are not well known for having fast internet. I have worked off of cruise ships. I have worked off in a hospital that had very poor broadband. So this is not to discount that there are communities that have no internet, or they have basically dial-up internet connections. But if you're watching this show, if you're watching this live stream, chances are you have some access to internet, enough so that you can think about remote work, or you're in a community that can support remote work.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for those answers, ladies. We don't have much time for Q&A, although there is one question that stood out, and maybe you can answer it before we close. One of the audience asked, like, what do you think for companies who are in office set up before COVID-19? What are their biggest roadblocks to going fully remote successfully?
Well, I think there's lots of different things to think about, and I think Tracy really gave a good answer around. It's just a whole cultural mindset around setting things up in a way that are accessible for everybody. So, I mean, if I were to think of some specific examples off the top of my head, it would be things like having good documentation around processes, how things work, setting things up to work asynchronously, like Marjorie said. Our people at Kinser are spread all over the world, so you have to think in a completely different way about when you might get a response to questions. It's not like just popping over to someone's desk. So I think there's just a huge amount of change that needs to happen with how they do it. And unfortunately, a lot of companies have been thrust into this position where they have to make that change very quickly, and potentially without the right support. And so that can make it tricky in a lot of ways.
Right, I agree. Tracy, we were doing a training.
Yeah,
Yes.
just as talking about documentation, we actually use, so the founder of Automatic has 5 levels of remote work. You're reaching nirvana, and we use that pyramid in so many of our talks. Like, this is the context of what we're going to reach. And it's what he references is asynchronous communication, documentation, and that kind of remote first mindset, and deliberate and intentional move towards it. So, and that actually, even if you ended up back in the office, but you thought about all of your experiences a little bit more, it's still going to be a better environment for you to be working in. So it's just great to start the journey anyway. And I'm not sure, just as you said, that we're going to be out of time soon. I just have one ask of people, because we're all about action, right? And it is, if you show, we use as well the map of Automatic and where they hire, use it all the time, and then we show the careers page. If you show that to people, they're like, what? If you see their eyes, like, we can do that here? You're like, yes. And it's so for you, it's really rewarding. For them, it's really rewarding. Remote work doesn't come in through the usual channels like careers days, that kind of stuff in our local communities. So if you can spread the word and tell people about these companies, it is transformative. So if you do one thing after today, call up somebody who you know and be like, hey, did you know you can have all of these opportunities no matter where you are? That's my action. Sorry, yeah. I have to have an action in.
Exactly. Yes, that's a very good action. Share the knowledge, right? Okay, Marjorie, you're the last in the group, and then we can go ahead and close.
And I'm sorry, I apologize. What was the original question again?
The question, hold on. The roadblock. The
roadblocks, yes. I repeat everything that Zaina and Tracy had mentioned. It really is a cultural mind shift. And I'm hoping that once the pandemic is over, knock on wood, people don't forget those lessons and realize, because ultimately it's about finding the best talent for your company. And Automatic has an advantage in that we can source talent from anywhere in the world. We're not limited to San Francisco, New York, London, Paris. We literally can go in the Philippines, in people's backyards, and hire and not require them to relocate or leave their family behind. And so companies have to think about that. You're not just competing anymore with the companies down the street or in the same city. You're competing with companies around the world. If you want to succeed in the future, you're going to have to think, how can I make sure that I'm able to attract the best talent? And so you have to think globally now, not just locally.
Yeah, totally agree. Completely agree. Thank you so much, ladies, and you for attending, for sharing your knowledge with us. I'm sure this is a real eye-opener to most people who are attending. Before we close, I'm just going to say that we will do a closing. I will be back after this. That's just so that people don't leave, right? Don't leave yet. I will be back. But I want to thank you three for the amazing talk. And I will see you around. If anybody wants to connect with their companies, you know where to find them. We will leave the links, and that is it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for
Thank
having me.
you.
Okay,
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Bye.
All right, and we are back. Thank you everyone for sticking around, for participating in the chat, for asking your questions. It has been an amazing day. It has been a long day, but it has been amazing. I hope it was fruitful for everybody. I hope you've gained knowledge and you will be able to apply what you've learned today. And just so before we go for today, we will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow is more focused towards companies, but if you are interested in that as well, we will be talking about basically why companies should be trained for remote working. If you're an employer, if you're an employer or an employee, the advantages and disadvantages of remote working and how to set up hybrid teams and whatnot. And we will also have another panel discussion, from international companies tomorrow. So we look forward to having you as well, same time, 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And so, like I said, don't forget to fill out the survey. We will flash it. We would flash the code right after the show. You can always come back to this recording if you need to, and I will see you tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Bye.